Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. I'm LJ.
And this is Chuck from OK Chasing the Beast. It's great to be on here with my buddy LJ, and we got a good guest for you guys tonight. Some of you may know the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Research Group, and tonight we have Mary Fabian, who is the founder of the group. And Mary, how are you doing? Wonderful to have you on the show.
I'm doing great, Chuck and OJ. Thank you.
Mary, I know there's probably a lot of people down south here, especially here in Oklahoma, that may or may not have heard about you. And we wanted to get you on the show. LJ and I actually went on the expedition with you with a bunch of other people, and we had a great experience here in Oklahoma. But we'd like to get you to talk about some of the stuff that you've done in Pennsylvania, and maybe tell the folks about your first encounter, if you don't mind.
Certainly, yes. And it's Pennsylvania Pennsylvania Bigfoot Project, and I'm head of it. I founded it in let me think, 2015 thereabouts, and that was as a result of a couple really long-term encounters at my home, and I wanted to find neighbors and other people in my area, who may have possibly had similar encounters, just to find more information. And I eventually just said, what the heck, let's just encompass the whole state, So my first encounter and first sighting was way back whenever I was a kid, in 1967. I lived on a farm, 100 acres, and on the back end of the farm was a gas line. And every so often, I'd get out and I'd just go hiking along that gas line, just follow it up along the trails and into the woods, and cut across and visit with some friends. So I remember that it was during warm weather. That's really about the only time of the year that I can recall. I don't recall the exact date or anything like that. It's been quite a while ago. But I was walking along this gas line, and it dipped down into a holler. And so I started down into the holler, and then directly across from me, on the upper end of the dip, here comes right now I will say it was a huge figure covered with dark hair, came walking out of the woods to my right, walked across the gas line and stopped, looked at me, and then he just continued on into the brush on the other side. Now, to me, back then, this was before Patterson-Gimlin, before the film came out, before anything like that. The only thing that we knew about back then was, stuff we saw on TV about the Siberian snowman or the Yeti. That's all we knew. Nothing like that around here. What I recall, of course, was, here it is, it's warm weather, and why is this ugly big man, wearing a big, heavy fur coat? And what stuck also in my mind was he looked like the Neanderthal men from movies, how they depicted them. And it just stuck in my mind, for all these years. It wasn't until, of course, decades later like around 2014, 2013, something like that, that it clicked, what he was. By that time, I was living, well, I'm from Western Pennsylvania. During the time of my first sighting, I lived about 20 miles south of Pittsburgh. And then decades later, during my other encounters, I was living about 30, 40 miles north of Pittsburgh. Skipping ahead a little bit too much here, but whenever I was a kid, we also camped. My dad would drive up into the mountains, and we would pile into our trailer and camp just about all summer. And we would, first thing in the morning, as soon as I finished breakfast, I would rush out the door and into the woods, and I would just follow game trails, explore, hike for miles, literally miles, and just wander around. And about dinner time, I'd wander back into camp. During those wanderings, I would find these trees and tree limbs that were woven, and that was something else that stuck in my mind for decades. That it's unusual because you could tell something that's natural or unnatural, and these tree limbs were literally woven, stuck in places. And then around them, if I hung around them too much looking at them, I would get rocks thrown at me. So I would just say, okay, I'm going away. And then I would turn around and continue on or go back. But again, it wasn't until decades later that it came together as to what was going on. By that time, I had remarried and lived north of Pittsburgh. The home that my husband had, I moved in 2004. Just about immediately, activity started. I would wake up in the middle of the night to something banging on the side of the wall, and I would hear a garbled, growly voice talking on the other side of the wall, the bedroom wall, saying, of course, now we know that as the samurai chatter. And whenever it first happened to me, I thought, what the heck is that? And I put it off as the ghost of the former owner. It was about the only thing that I could think of as that was. But after digging and after continued activity for 12 years, banging on the wall, something peeking in the windows, something agitating my dog. Finally, I saw him peeking up over the stone wall behind the house, that I kind of figured out what the heck, there's Bigfoot around here. I went online to learn more. Let's see what are these, what are they about? What do they do? And I ran into all kinds of woo groups and different things. I would talk to them, but then what they said just did not make sense. If something doesn't, if it's not common sense, if it doesn't meet logic, then it just doesn't connect. It can't be. So I finally ran into a group of guys. What they said was common sense. it met science, it met logic, it was, and I said, okay. So I just learned from them.
Well, Mary,
Pardon? Yes.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but there's a couple things that you said that really amazed me. Number one, what you just said about living with that for 12 years.
Yeah.
That is unreal that you put up with that all that time. I had one that I took a photograph of a mile from my house, and I know that he followed me home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had a slap on my window one night about 2:00 in the morning, and when I heard it, I knew exactly what it was. I jumped out of bed, ran outside, couldn't find him. But to put up with that for 12 years, I mean, oh my gosh, I can't imagine. I mean, that would have probably made me insane, I think.
Well, he would come around, and it was almost like clockwork. He would come around just about every 3 weeks or so. He would, if I was in bed, he would, whack the wall. Or if I was up late watching TV out in the family room, he would do something. I don't know what, but I would hear, sudden silence. The frogs in the pond, they would suddenly go quiet, and
right,
and everything, the crickets, everything would go silent. So I knew that he was there. And then my dog, she would react. She was a rescue from a border collie rescue in Ohio. The Indian Summers Border Collie Rescue in Minerva, Ohio, which Minerva, Ohio is also pretty famous for Bigfoot. But
right,
she would act, she would react with extreme fear. She would always lay watching the back door. And whenever I knew that he was there, she would just start growling very softly, and it would be a mixture of a whine and a growl. And then she would literally crawl backwards until, whining and growling until she was huddled up against my legs, just shivering in fear. And, she had been abused by a former owner, and she was very timid. But she was not afraid of any animal. She would go after the groundhogs constantly. She wasn't afraid, of any animal. This put her in complete terror, and it made me angry, very, very angry, that something would bully her deliberately. And so I would rush out the door like you did, and throw the door open, and I'd holler at him. I'd call him big boy and stop bullying my dog, and he'd run off. I wouldn't see him. He'd run off too quick, but it just made me angry.
Right. I can understand that. One of the other things you mentioned was your first sighting, and you've told me that sighting before, and I just it didn't hit me till you told it this time. You were actually walking down what's called a right-of-way. Am I correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. My second sighting that I had was in the Sam Houston National Forest. There was a little over 20 people there, and half of us went down one direction, south toward the river, and the other half went to the north. Well, my group went to the south, and they had put gas lines in around the Sam Houston National Forest. There's quite a few oil wells and gas wells there. But they had a right-of-way, kind of like what you went through. And my second sighting was on that right-of-way.
Oh.
And that makes me wonder, since you've had a pretty similar experience, is if they use those right-of-ways to travel. that's pretty interesting.
Do you mind if I add
Yeah,
something real quick?
yeah.
My first sighting was right next to a power line right of way.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's
Yep.
interesting. And I've heard the power line right of ways are a hotbed of being able to see one because they've seen them in those right of ways, and
Right.
it kind of makes sense. I mean, it's the perfect travel point from point A to point B for them, and there's not very many people that go up and down right of ways, so that makes a little bit of sense to me. Maybe that's something, LJ, that we need to kind of consider when we're out looking and doing research. Is let's check the right of ways.
Well, I will say, remember when we were out on our last outing, how we had found that gas line right away, and we had rode up it quite a ways. One thing that I will mention about right of ways, whether it be power line or gas line, you always find, well, you don't always, but typically if you look, especially when they run through private land, people put their blinds, their hunting blinds, in those. And you always find lots of tracks of animals, deer and whatnot. It's a very good place to sit and wait for an animal to walk through, and if you're hunting, and shoot it. So it would make sense to me. It would as well be a very beneficial place for one of these creatures to set up a ambush area in the wooded area next to it. That's just
Absolutely.
as a hunter, that's the way my mind's thinking. So why wouldn't they utilize that resource?
Yeah, that's it makes sense, that they use that, those trails, because game use it also, it's nice and clear, no obstructions, nice clearing for them to hunt. But there must be something else that draws them. But one other thing, and I had connected some other dots. I may have connected wrongly. I have no idea. But at the end of that particular gas line, right away, there's this pretty famous in the haunted paranormal community, a deserted neighborhood. The complete neighborhood, a bunch of homes, about 20 homes on one street in a little holler in western Pennsylvania. Homes were deserted, dishes still on the table, clothes in the closets, furniture, everything still there. It's called Lincoln Way. And you can look it up and look at pictures, look at video of people exploring it. And the stories go is that there's something that would hang around the end of that neighborhood. They would hear growling and see red eyes peeking out. And so it's, it's a weird little coincidence. Who knows, why it was deserted? Really don't know. But you can watch the videos on YouTube, about it.
Well, after you're talking about that, I know of a place. I can't remember the name of it, but there's a place in Alaska that's the same way. They had lumber mills and everything. It was a pretty busy town, and then all of a sudden, people just up and left it.
Yeah.
The story has it that there was Bigfoot in that area that came up and started harassing the people that were there.
Mm-hmm.
They got tired of it and they just left. I'm sure if a person was to look around and do some investigating, I bet you could find several towns like that all across the state.
That's an interesting idea. It's not an idea, it's a reality. I don't know about you guys, but the more that I get into this, the more that I research, the more that I try to educate myself on the ins and outs of this creature the best that we can, because no one's an expert on these. We know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you see these shows where they say a Bigfoot expert, they're introducing someone that's a Bigfoot expert. And guys,
Yeah.
people like us, we laugh about that because we're like, there's no experts on this stuff.
Yeah.
But the encounters, the experiences that are otherworldly related to the Sasquatch, I don't know if they're increasing or I'm just paying more attention, but I'm hearing more of that. And Chuck and I can even verify we've had experiences ourselves that are strange, absolute, downright dumbfounding even. That leads me to a question for you, Mary. Have you ever came across something that, just left you speechless that maybe you couldn't explain as an encounter with one of these creatures?
Not yet, but I do hear quite a few. And I have seen, I don't know, people say that they see orbs and so on. I have seen a orb a long time ago, but I wasn't Bigfooting or anything like that. Who knows if there was a Bigfoot around? I haven't a clue. I really don't know. My mind automatically goes to science. Okay, how does science explain this? How can I break this down and explain this in a scientific manner? There's things you just can't.
No, and you're absolutely right on that. I totally agree. That kind of points to Chuck and I's approach on this. We don't initially believe everything we see in the woods. There are usually a scientific or a logical explanation for what we're seeing. And a lot of times, if you just stop and look around, you'll find that.
Yes.
It's when we don't find that, but yet we're seeing the evidence with our own eyes. That is what sucks us into this. And what are your comments on that? What are your experiences? I should ask you.
Well, I used to live in a haunted house. The house that the farmhouse that I lived in whenever I was a kid and saw the Bigfoot, it was haunted. There was the original owner, an old woman. She would wander around the house at nighttime, and we'd hear her. My dad saw her a couple times. She would walk from upstairs to downstairs most of the time, but then one time she walked upstairs and into my bedroom in the middle of the night, and here I am huddled up under the covers and hear her footsteps walking up next to the bed and her finger tapping the nightstand.
Oh, that gave me goosebumps.
Yeah, like that. And I kept the covers over my head. I was going to look.
Oh, I imagine that was frightening.
Yeah.
Well, LJ and I will tell you, Mary, that we do believe in the supernatural stuff, and we both experienced supernatural stuff. But that's, to me, and I think LJ can say the same thing. To me, that's an area that I don't really want to research.
Same here. I want nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I'd rather deal with flesh and blood.
Yeah.
And I think we're all on the same page when I say this. I'm a believer in the Lord Jesus, and
Yes.
I read the guidebook to the supernatural almost every night.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not against anyone going out and researching paranormal activity. I just know what my God that I follow tells me. And he tells me to stay away from that stuff. So if he's giving me that warning, then there's a reason for it. And whether I know the reason or not, I'm going to heed his advice. I have learned over the years, and I'm sure you can verify, and Chuck also, that when you deal with stuff, these entities, you don't know what they are. You think you do, but you really don't. And you don't know what... because when let me put it to you this way. When you are researching that stuff, when you are looking for that stuff, to that stuff, you are agreeing to what they're doing. And you're saying to them it is okay for them to partake or to come into your life and be a part of it. You're inviting them into your life.
You're opening the door.
Exactly. That's it, exactly.
Right.
And you don't know what's coming through that door.
No.
And,
no, you don't.
And that's why we don't want anything to do with it, because of the biblical aspect of it. Not that way, and we don't think anything bad about anyone that does it. No, you go do what you need to do. It's just, we limit ourselves to that, and like Chuck just said, to flesh and blood beings, because we can typically handle that. And we can see.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, the ghostly aspect, I respect my friends who do that, who explore the haunted houses and get into that and more in depth. But I honestly want nothing to do with it. I won't go on ghost hunts. I used to watch, the TV shows, and some weird things happened one time while I was watching a ghost hunters marathon, and I thought, oh, okay, that's it. I shut off the TV, changed channel. I'm not bringing something in, just from watching it. No, the Bigfoot, like yourself, I'm a devout Christian with a very deep faith, in my Lord Jesus. I have prayed about, what I'm doing, with Bigfoot, because, there are some questions as to what the Bigfoot, the creatures are, their DNA, what is their background, what are they, other than, okay, they share similar attributes to other non-human primates, are they a relic hominid? Are they just another branch of the hominid tree, just something not Neanderthal, not Gigantopithecus, not Denisovian, but something else that is undiscovered.
Chuck has a poster hanging in his dining room. I think is it from the 70s, Chuck?
It is from the 70s, yes.
All right, well, it's a poster of a Sasquatch, and it's got all these anatomical features to it. And it's a really cool poster. Whoever did this poster knew a little bit about what they were doing and what they were trying to demonstrate. The biggest problem with this poster, however, is the feet are, well, they're gorilla feet.
Oh, okay.
Yep. I'm looking at it right now. It's the poster called Bigfoot Knowledge. They did a really good job on putting this thing together, except for the feet. The feet look like gorilla feet. Now, the hands look like human hands, but the feet look like gorilla feet.
Well, and the reason I bring that up is the evidence that I have came across out there does not support that particular hypothesis. In fact, the feet of these things are every one that I've ever seen look just like a human's, except much bigger, much wider, much longer. And there's, if the ground is some sort of hard in some areas, and you come across the track, you will find a mid-tarsal break. And for instance, Chuck and I one time down in a very sandy area found some footprints. I think we measured them around 13, maybe 14 inches long. And they were going down a side of a dirt road, a sandy road. And they went for, probably 30 yards, and then it went off out into the ditch. But we're trying to match these prints stride for stride. And I've got long legs. I'm 6 foot. I'm almost 6'2", and my stride is fairly long. And I had to hyperextend my stride to even match, and it was just not even comfortable doing it. But every print had a mid-tarsal break in it, and that's what alerted us to it, other than the fact that it was barefoot.
Right.
So, what's your experience with prints or anything like that?
The ones that I found are mid-tarsal break and extraordinarily deep because of the weight of the creature. I would try to jump in the same. I love going out after a rain because you have lots of mud, and I have the best luck in finding them at that time. But I can't even come close to the depth, of of these feet, the footprints. A lot of them that I've found, they've been around maybe 9-10 inches long, and during weather that it's too cold for someone to be walking around in bare feet. There's let me see, 10 inches, 9 inches. There was 13 inches. I have a cast of one that is 17 inches long. That was taken a little bit north, about 60 miles north of here in northern Pennsylvania. I don't know, can't remember. I've got photos of handprints on the side of my truck. Be sleeping in my truck in an active area, and something would decide to play with me and rock my truck. That's a little startling, but that's as far as it goes. Just little juveniles on the most part, playing games with the silly humans.
On average, Chuck, what would you say? I'm going to throw out a number of 13 inches is the average footprint length we find. What would be your comment on that?
I would say that's pretty close. That's pretty close. Now, you were with me when we went up to investigate. A lady called us and said that she had been living with them for 4 years and that she wanted them to be gone. She wanted us to come up there and kind of help her out, and we went up and helped her out. The most amazing prints that I have ever seen, I've seen in 2 different areas here in Oklahoma, and one was a 23-inch track that was in northwest Oklahoma, and then at this lady's residence, there were 2 23-inch tracks in her backyard. And that is phenomenal.
Yeah.
That's the biggest track I've ever seen. LJ, do you remember seeing those tracks in her backyard?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's burned in my mind. I'll never forget those. Now, I will comment on that. I'll add to that, Chuck. If you'll remember, when I was by myself down at a particular area that we go to, I found 24-inch tracks.
Yeah.
And I'll also add, you remember the field that I brought you to where I had been riding my let me back up for a second, Mary. One of the techniques that I'll use in this particular area is there's a lot of floodplains, because in the duck hunting season they flood these areas, and they're huge. Mm-hmm. They're big old fields, and they flood them and bring in the waterfowl for duck hunters, and it's all public land and everything. And but during the off seasons, they're dry. One of my techniques is I'll get on my 4-wheeler and I'll stand up on the seat, or just stand up, and I'll just slowly ride on the edge of these fields. And what I'm looking for is tracks, because there's a lot of muddy areas. Well, I had came across this area one time, and it had to have at least 50 to 100 tracks in it.
Oh, wow.
They were, and I suspect they were digging up the crawfish and everything that was, in this area, and there were probably minnows and stuff. And I don't even know what all they were there, but they were getting food there. And the average track. I'm sorry, go ahead, Chuck. No, you can jump right in on that, because I took you to that about a week later.
Yeah, Mary, you've actually been to this location with us.
Yes, you have.
Oh, okay.
Well, let's just go ahead and just spoiler here. It was Brown Springs.
Oh, okay. All right. Yes, that was fun. That was interesting.
That's one story I would like for you to tell the folks, if you don't mind, your trip to Oklahoma and being on an expedition with us. And it was a great trip. We had a lot of exciting things happen. But I'd like for you to maybe talk about some of the things that you noticed while you were here, and maybe a little story about a casino if you feel like telling.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
kind of throw in there if you can remember off the top of your head who all was there, because for me
Uh-huh.
that was my first outing with a big group of people, and we had an amazing time. So I'll just hand it over to you.
Oh goodness, that was an amazing time for myself, and um, I had received the invitation to join the group, and so my sister and I, Debbie Parker McGee, she and I traveled out. We drove out to Oklahoma and joined the group. And every day we would go out and scout around at different areas, and then at nighttime we would hit up the more promising areas. Uh, I think the first night that sticks in my mind was in the evening that we went out into this field next to a creek. There we could see eye shine and hear whistles. Apparently, there was a herd of deer that was being hunted. We were interrupting that. And the whistles kept coming around, moving around, I think, from the side, and then they were heard from behind us. And I think my sister, she stayed in the truck there. She wasn't interested in going outside. You know, she was fairly frightened. But no, I went out, but I stayed close to the truck, just to make sure that she was okay. We could hear whistles from behind us, and we were fairly close to a tall patch of weeds, and that kind of made me nervous because I was afraid that something was going to come crawling up on us, through through the brush. And finally, we left there and drove on. But I think at nighttime we would hit up maybe 3 or 4 different places, and just about everybody, had a sighting. Almost everybody during that entire week.
Mhm.
Trying to remember names, but can't remember everyone. But Valerie, the fantastic lady from Louisiana, Bets and Cynthia from Missouri, Jim Osmer, Jim Sharp, yourselves, Tim Kumbo Baker. Of course, he was heading it. Oh, there were more. Honestly, can't remember. But there were about
There's
14
quite
of
a few
us.
of us on that trip.
Yeah, there were about 14 of us, I think, all together. We went to a few different places. Another place that I recall that really freaked me out was it had a high cliff on one side. We were down at the bottom of it, and this cliff
Purgatory.
kind of. Well, no, that wasn't Purgatory. Although Purgatory was pretty impressive.
It was down there.
Now this
That was in Anadarko, I think.
was it. Oh, okay, yeah. This cliff overhang the road, and we
Yep.
could hear footsteps coming up top. And I don't know. I was getting a headache, a migraine, and so I had to go back to the truck. And I think Chuck, I think you had gotten a migraine too. I'm not sure at that place, or else it was the other location where Debbie had her sighting.
It was one of those places. I can't remember which one, but you're right. I did have a migraine headache just all of a sudden.
Yeah, that's the spot. Yeah, because I remember you, Chuck, coming and asking me, "Are you feeling okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he told me, he said, "Yeah, I'm not feeling very well, and I don't think Mary is, and there was a couple of others, I believe." And we finally just left.
Yeah, and then the one place, we went to Purgatory another night, and I think we had some activity there. There were some calls from different directions, something coming in on us, which was rather, interesting.
I
And
think Valerie even heard footsteps. That road is cut out there, and the cutout, you're about 30 feet up. You've got a ledge, and I think Valerie even heard that there was footsteps walking around the edge up there. We never did see anything, but we could definitely tell that they were in the area.
Yeah. Oh,
Well,
yeah.
I had heard a wood knock pretty much immediately after we all got out and got settled and got quiet. And I believe that there was some other rustling around there. And up on that ridge back to the east, in that field, if y'all recall, I believe there was some heat signatures we had gotten on the thermal up on the top of that ridge running across the ridge.
Okay. Was that towards the old jail, or was that the
Yes,
opposite
it was
side?
behind it. You know that hill that went up behind the old
Yeah.
jail? Yeah, it was
Right.
up on top of there.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember seeing those heat signatures there.
Yeah, so we were not alone in that area. What was
No.
your impression of that area when you got there?
I thought, it was very picturesque. I enjoyed being there. I was able to test my camera. I have a Nikon P900, something like that, but it has 83 times zoom on it. And so I was able to zoom way out and catch some cows that were way out at the edge of the fields. But at nighttime, it definitely had the creep factor to it.
Absolutely.
Mary, I went down there, it was probably 3 months ago, maybe even longer now. I drove down there one evening just for something to do. I took a recorder and I parked right there at the gate by that jail. And I sat there for probably an hour, maybe a little longer, as the sun set, with a recorder on the hood of my pickup, just hoping I'd hear something. But, the longer I sat there, the more creepy feeling I got. And I was like, you know what, there's just not much going on out here, so I'm going.
Yeah, that's not a place I would go by myself. Ain't no way.
Yeah, it's an interesting place, and when you go down there, you're thinking, "Oh, this is it," and because it's not very impressive until you spend a few hours there, or or an hour there.
Nighttime.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, because I liked it during the daytime. It was a lot to see. It was a very pretty area, but nighttime, totally different. The atmosphere was totally different.
Yeah, you get the creeps when you're there at night.
Yes.
You do get. Well, Mary, let's talk about one of the most memorable moments.
Yes.
And that is when your sister Debbie became a believer.
Yes, please. Let's talk about that.
But should I talk about what happened after we left Purgatory and stopped at a certain casino?
Yeah, go ahead, bring that. Yeah, because that needs to be brought up as well.
Yeah,
yes.
and then we'll talk about your sister.
Yes.
The floor is yours, ma'am. You just take it away.
Yeah, we were headed out. I think we were heading out from Purgatory. It was after Purgatory, and we stopped because someone was having problems with their vehicle. So we pulled over into a parking lot of a casino. This was around 12:30 at night, and maybe later, I'm not sure, but everyone was tired, but everybody else they had their heads underneath the hood of the truck trying to help the other guy fix his truck. And the four of us, there was myself and my sister in the back seat of Dave's pickup truck. Dave was the driver, and Chuck, you were the passenger. We were just sitting there in this parking lot facing towards the casino. the bright lights in the parking lot. And, we were just sitting there. And Dave and my sister, neither one of them had ever seen, or they had never seen a Bigfoot before. They were sitting there playing with their phones, playing games or texting. I have no idea what they were doing. But you and I think we had both were fairly experienced with Bigfoot, so it doesn't matter where you're at, you always stay alert. I was looking out the window, just looking. I see this figure come running out from between the casino and the building next to it, run across the parking lot, underneath the bright lights, past the trucks, real fast, across the parking lot, across the highway, and then into the woods on the other side. And I'm just sitting there stunned, at the speed of this thing. And Chuck, you said, "Did you see that?" And I said, "I saw that." And I think we both said, one time, there was a Bigfoot running across there.
Yep.
It was crazy. I think the security came out from the casino. I was hoping, and, I think I had asked a couple times, "Oh, please, can you pull the cameras, and so we can get a copy of that." Apparently they wouldn't share the video because they were afraid, I suppose, that that customers wouldn't come. That's a shame, but it would have been,
that would have been really
good video. Oh my God, that would have been excellent video.
Well, and
But
I'll interject here real quick that we've learned from experience the local tribes around here, they're very, very reluctant to share anything like that. We Chuck and I know of much better video even than that they will not talk about. So like you said,
I can imagine.
It probably has to do with revenue. I'm sure it does, but
and a little bit. After I got back home again from the trip, I went on to Google Earth. I was able to figure out how fast the Bigfoot was running, because I think, Chuck, both you and we had compared notes and kind of figured, okay, it took him just about 3 seconds to run from point A to point B. And I was able to measure the distance from where he came out to where he disappeared in the wood line. And so time and distance, I was able to figure out that he was running about 52 miles an hour.
Yeah, I remember you doing that, and I remember you doing that, Mary, and sending me a link to it, and you did some amazing work on figuring that out. So,
now, guys, correct me if I'm wrong. Yes,
big
absolutely, big kudos to you on that. But correct me if I'm wrong. Was there not a highway sign that was there right in front of the casino that you guys used that as a comparison for height?
Right. Yeah, it was along the highway.
Well, no. What was the conclusion on that? Did you guys actually go measure that sign or walk and look at that sign, or because they're all set at about the same height, so it's fairly easy to determine that. But what was the conclusion on the height of that thing that ran across the road, or estimate anyway?
My husband works as a paver for a road construction crew, and he's worked on highways and roads. So he knows there's the standard height. And God, right now I can't remember. Is it 8 or 9 feet? The standard height is something like that. It's been a couple years. I think we were able to figure out that he was 8 foot tall, Chuck, or 8 or 9?
I think that's right. 8 or 8'3", something around in there.
Yeah. It's been a few years since I, dug into that, and I can't remember everything. But he was black, and doggone, he ran right underneath those bright lights out in that parking lot, which totally amazed me. But I guess that's why he was running so fast, just to get through.
Mary, do you remember talking to when the manager of the casino and the head of security came out and they were speaking with us after this event? Do you remember them talking about just right there by the parking lot, pretty much where we were? There was a
Yes.
old cemetery there, and they'd had all kinds of strange things happening, and they'd seen Squatch a lot of times there. Do you remember the stories they were telling us?
No, offhand, no. I must have missed that conversation. Um, yeah, because I think I pretty much tried to stay with my sister because she was, I don't know why she came along, really, I think just to keep me company, but
Well,
she was
that'll lead
frightened.
us to the next part of this. Why don't you tell about your sister's experience?
Yeah, my sister was pretty much a skeptic. She believed me, her little sister. She had faith in me, that I had seen them, that I had had these experiences. But still, she said that in the back of her mind, there was still this, little bit of doubt, that, oh, they can't be real. So I think it was the next to last night that we went out, or the last night, I can't remember, but we went into this area that the activity there was fantastic that night. On the way out, at the end of the evening, we were driving out. We had a 7-vehicle caravan. We were riding in Chuck's truck this time, and my sister sat behind Chuck, and I think she had taken enough ribbing, from us hollering at her to get her nose out of her phone and, you know, look out the windows, and you're not going to see a Bigfoot in your phone. And so she said, "Okay, I'm going to watch." So we were heading out, and the headlights from the vehicle behind us hit into the trees as we were turning this little curve. And she said she saw something sitting in the Y of a tree. It was shaped like a letter Y in the cork of a tree. And she said, but whenever she first told us, we were heading out, and all of a sudden she was just acting strange and saying, uh, 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 I think I saw something. And, we were trying to, yeah, we're trying to drag it out of her. What did you see? And she said, something furry, something fuzzy. And, and she was in shock. She was in complete shock. She couldn't get it out as to what she saw. And finally, we got it out of her that she said, I think I saw a Bigfoot. And so, Chuck got on the walkie-talkie to Kumbo and told him that Debbie saw something. So we turned the caravan around and drove back and went through, and we found the tree, but nothing was in it. And she was so mad that nothing was in it. She thought that we wouldn't believe her. She thought, okay, he should have been sitting there, waving hi at her, so something. But no, the ladies in the vehicle behind us, they said that they saw something jump down from that tree after we passed. So that confirmed her story, her sighting. That was a pretty fantastic sighting for her. And so now every time we go out, she has control of the spotlight, and she shines it up in the trees, and she's always looking up in the trees.
I tell you what, Mary, that night for her, I saw an amazing transformation.
Yes.
From being scared to death, frightened, did not want to go out at night with us,
Right.
And before the night was over, she had the window rolled down in my truck and had the spotlight hanging out the window. And she kept saying, "I want to see another one. I want to see another one." And
Yes.
and I know exactly what she was going through, because
Oh, yeah.
anytime you actually see one, 9 chances out of 10, you want to see another one.
Oh, absolutely. You know, she got the bug. She got the bug hard.
Yeah.
You know, she's, you know, we're always going camping. You know, she works. I'm retired, so I fortunately have more time, but she joins me whenever she can. I think, well, this weekend we're heading out to Ohio for a camping trip for the weekend. And she says she can't wait, because I keep telling her about this area, that I've had activity there. I've heard vocals there right at camp. Something walked behind my tent. I found footprints behind my tent. You know, it's an awesome area, and she cannot wait. And I've got, I don't know, about a half a dozen camping trips planned and set up, you know, all summer. So she'll go. Yeah, she jumps at the chance now.
Let me
Yeah,
interject a side of this that maybe you guys, I'm sure you haven't heard, because that night, Tim, Kumbo, Bill Sharp, and myself, we were in Tim's pickup, and we were leading the caravan. And I vividly remember that because Tim and I were having some really good conversations, well, and Jim too. And all of a sudden the walkie-talkie lit up and Chuck's like, "Hey, we need to turn around. We need to turn around." And Kumbo's like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And he said, "Debbie just saw something in a tree." And we're like, "What'd she see?" And then Chuck went into detail about it. We're like, "Okay, we're turning around, going back." Because, you know, at first Tim was like, "Well, what was it, a raccoon?" Or, you know, like, "Oh, no." So it was quite hilarious on our end initially. And then it became really serious. So, you know, remember, Tim had just seen one with his thermal walk, or no, it was night vision camera he had. He'd seen one walk right in front of us after we'd had that experience with the hog. Y'all remember that?
Yes.
Yeah, he said his thermal went red hot. And he thought there was something wrong with his thermal.
Yeah.
And he was messing with his thermal.
Yeah, because he was trying to get it all focused. It wasn't even recording yet, which he kicked himself in the butt for later. But I remember him telling me, he said, "This thing walked across and it had a saggy butt, looked like a wet diaper." But we had some other things happen. We had quite a bit happen down there that night.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a fantastic area.
The crazy part about that moment there was after Kumbo sees the one walking in front of him, he hollers at me, "Do you have your gun? Do you have your gun?" And
right,
I said,
I remember that.
It's in my pickup.
Yeah, I remember that.
We all got guns, and next thing we know, there's this great big wild hog that just comes out of the wood line and crosses the road right in front of us.
Yeah, and it was like it was hypnotized. It was just kind of drogging across there.
It was like, I think that hog got hit by infrasounds, is what I think. And I think what we did that night, I think what we did was interrupt a hog hunt, because right after the hog crossed the road, we saw two more about 100 yards from us walk out of the wood line and stand on the road. We caught them with our eye shot.
Bigfoot. Yeah.
So there was multiple Bigfoot in that area.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me jump in and put in my perspective at that time. Whenever we heard Kumbo say, you know, get your gun, there's hogs around. I grabbed Debbie and I hustled her over to your truck, Chuck, and opened the door, and I literally shoved her up into the back seat she didn't know what was going on. And then I jumped into the passenger seat, and I stayed there with her because somebody had stolen my revolver a few months before, so I wasn't carrying. And so I stayed in the truck, with Debbie. I think stayed in there for quite a while, and you guys were out exploring because you found an old house foundation or something. And then I think you weren't feeling well, so you came back to the truck and you climbed up in. We're sitting there, and then all of a sudden, I had my window down. I heard some growling next to the truck. I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to scare Debbie. And it didn't really frighten me. It didn't give off vibes that it was about to attack or anything like that. I think to me it was just more of, get the heck out of here. And then Kumbo came up, and I guess he thought that we were fooling around or something with this growling with a recording. And no, it was it was right there.
As we actually drove on down the road a ways until we got to a cattle guard that had a gate across it that we couldn't go into.
Right.
And we sat there at that cattle guard and had our windows rolled down in our vehicles. We heard several times a couple more growls while we were sitting at that cattle guard. Do you remember that, LJ?
Yeah.
Yes, I do. And we had heard other things too. Do y'all remember? It was in succession. It went on for the whole time we were there. It was like a wah. I don't know if y'all remember that. It just kept going and going. And I remember Jim in the pickup asking, "What is that?" Because the way that it would register in my mind is it sounded like a motorcycle taking off on the highway, but wasn't shifting. And it was so strange.
Yeah. It was stuck in first gear.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And we're all experienced wood people. We've been around the woods our whole life, and I've never heard anything like that.
No.
And even Kumbo, he was like, Jim, I don't know what the heck that is. And I was like, well, it's got to be probably one of them making a noise of some sort. But yeah, that was a very memorable trip. And I just want to interject this. I remember later on, after the night progressed, we'd stop, and it may have been at that place we had just mentioned. I remember I'd got out of the pickup, and we were all gathered around in a area there, and Debbie was physically shaking.
Oh, yeah.
And I walked up to her, and I put my arm around her, and I said, "Are you okay?" And she looked at me, and she said, "I just saw a Bigfoot." And I was like, it changed your whole paradigm, didn't it? And she just kind of shook her head. She didn't know what to say. And I was like, welcome to the club, ma'am.
Yep.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club. So that was a good trip. And I tell you what, I think we've given David so much slack that he won't even talk to us anymore because I haven't heard from Dave in quite a while, but we were giving him such a hard time. And you've never seen a Bigfoot, and it's because you're sitting there looking at your phone the whole time. And I think we just aggravated him enough. He just got mad at us or something. I don't know. But,
no, I think he's just too busy with his job or something.
Yeah, he does travel a lot.
Yeah.
And I want to say this because y'all are great friends of mine, and I do want to say this about Chuck. Chuck and I have been in some places. We've been friends for a long time now. Chuck has never lied to me. Chuck has never led me astray. Chuck has never given me any reason to doubt the authenticity of what he's telling me.
Mm-hmm.
When he tells me something, I believe it. He has no reason to lie. So the reason I bring that up is because the casino encounter was brought into question by some certain individuals, or one individual in particular. And when I'd first heard it, I was like, what? Are you serious? But there's two eyewitnesses there, and probably more that we don't know about, that won't talk about it. So I just want to say that Chuck is a man of his word. If he says something, then that's the way it is. And so that I just wanted to interject that because, because he doesn't think that he needs to take up for himself or anything, but to people that would doubt what he has to say, I just want them to know this guy is solid. He's 100%. He's not going to lie to you. Whatever he sees, whatever he experiences, if he tells you, it's the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we back up each other as to what we both saw, and it was there, and I wouldn't have kept talking about, why doesn't security, share the video, if it wasn't true, I wouldn't have kept saying that.
Well, we know, Mary, that because Chuck and I, we've experienced that they probably will never share that with anyone.
And yeah, that's understandable. Understandable.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you've experienced a cryptid animal in any way and want to tell your story, email us at cryptidsafari@gmail.com. You're welcome to come on to the show or just simply talk to someone who will listen. We're here for you. Remember to be kind to one another, seek the truth in love, and He will make you free. Until next time.